right, let's do this one last time.
That's the intro. Nice.
That's a great intro. Hang on.
It is.
Hello there.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Talk to me, Goose.
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Why so serious?
I could do this all day.
Are you watching closely?
Welcome, everybody, officially to the One Head Film Podcast. You already heard from us. That's not like a clip from ahead in the episode. Josh just nailed it on the first try. We are talking today about Spider-Verse movies, which we had to talk about the first two because I knew that's the only way I could get Josh on an episode again. We also don't have the patience to wait for, what is it, Underneath the Spider-Verse? Whatever the third one is. Through the Spider-Verse.
Beyond
I actually don't
the
know.
Spider-Verse?
Between the Spider-Verse.
Between.
No, it's Beyond.
Beyond. Yep. As much of a fan of it as I am, I can't think of that.
I think there's a huge delay right now. Like a...
I just heard him say like
go.
a, and then...
Yeah, I heard that too.
I'm assuming he's going off on a rant of...
Come on.
There he is. He's back. Hi.
I'm back.
You showed
Guys,
up.
this is what you get for living out in Dipstick Nowheresville. Hang on, I'm gonna try and boost my Wi-Fi. Okay,
All
how
right,
long is the delay?
You're a little bit smoother.
Is it bad?
Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Go.
6,
Oh,
7,
I thought you were doing go.
8, 9,
8,
10,
9,
11.
11, 12.
That's not bad.
You're about 1 second off. But you didn't start counting
Okay,
until 8, so that wasn't very helpful.
I don't think that's an internet connection problem. That's just my brain's connection to the world right now.
It's a Josh problem.
Yep.
Okay. Whatever you did worked. We're back. I'm keeping all
Oh,
that
no, he's
in.
frozen.
Oh, no.
Oh, he's
There,
back. He's back.
All right, it's going to be back and forth.
Yeah,
Josh, I
probably.
Josh, I can't wait for you to go back to college. Even if it's college Wi-Fi.
Me.
It's better than Dipstick Nowhere Wi-Fi.
Oh, he's frozen again.
You know what? I think I can. Here's what we're gonna do. We're moving. We're moving
had 'em.
right next to the
Why didn't we do
router.
anything? Yeah. Let's go.
Incredibly toasty in there, guys. This is a tour of my house. Welcome.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. I've been there.
Now you can get the
All
Dipstick
right.
Nowheresville in the outside, although it won't focus.
It's so overexposed, though. That's fine. It's fine.
I need a better spot. No.
Floor time.
Floor time?
I'm glad we're getting this all recorded.
He goes, ow.
All right.
He's on the
Oh, there we go.
No, Josh, I expect you to lay prone on the floor with your laptop like hovering above you.
Oh. So that this beautiful wooden floor is the background.
It looks like you're sitting.
Does it? If I sit up like this the whole time, maybe. It almost looks like a green screen. What the heck?
It does.
Yeah, because the lighting looks different. Your green screen looks more fake than my green screen.
Yeah, and it's
It's not a green screen.
knock on wood. Now the connection here should be a little bit better.
It is pretty smooth. It's pretty buttery. All right. Now that we got that out of the way, welcome to the episode.
Long intros.
Yeah, content. Oh, Spider-Verse. It's all right, I guess.
Yeah, it's okay.
Hold on. All right. It is literally my favorite movie of all time.
Mine too.
Into the Spider-Verse is a masterpiece.
I mean, I've got
Zach
a poster
is-
back there, so.
Obligatory poster point is from his
Yep.
office. Josh, I know you had Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse in your top 3, but your other one often changes. Can I ask what your current, whatever place it is on the podium is?
Well, let me check the notes.
Oh, yeah. You write your notes down.
Yeah.
Oh.
Number 1 is still Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
What is the other one?
I was asking what your third, like what your current podium was.
Oh, number 1, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Number 2, How to Train Your Dragon. And number 3, Whiplash.
Whiplash is still up there.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm curious why you dropped Across the Spider-Verse so low over the last couple months, because I liked Across the Spider-Verse more than Into the Spider-Verse. By a
You're the
hair.
minority here.
Okay.
I think that is a minority.
Yeah.
Okay.
love Across the Spider-Verse. 11 on my list doesn't mean it's by any means a bad movie. I think I first put it up there, I was in the hype of the Spider-Verse trilogy, and I was really, really excited about it, especially with the amazing cliffhanger that they gave us. It's well written, great story, but I am a huge fan of intros, and I think they nailed the origin story for Miles Morales. And it's hard to beat a good origin story that's just solid. We haven't seen Miles Morales anywhere else except for this Spider-Verse trilogy, really. The Across the Spider-Verse movie, still phenomenal, but I think I just started watching a lot of other movies that made me feel the same way that I feel about Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah,
And
I would
yourself.
say Across the Spider-Verse is really great. It's got the thrills, the animation, and everything from the first one. But I don't think it really captures the heart of the first one as well. I think it's got a lot of action, and it just kind of keeps going the whole time. It doesn't really have many instances where we can just breathe. And also, I think just this is a minor-ish nitpick. I was a big fan of Peter B. Parker. I think Peter B. Parker's probably like the best Peter Parker. And I didn't really like how much he was sidelined in the second one. So, and I think I also would have liked to see all the Spider-Men from the first one come back too.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
Yeah.
I think Into the Spider-Verse is just a great Spider-Man film that's able to kind of have these great themes and really understands the core of Spider-Man while still telling this big multiverse story. So I think that's why I still consider Into the Spider-Verse to be better than Across the Spider-Verse.
You're right. I do think that the two, even though they talk about or are centered around the Spider-Verse, are very different movies. 2 and 3 look like they're going to be part 1 and part 2 more or less. And the first one kind of was as down to earth as you could get with the Spider-Verse story. But yeah, kind of abandoning all of those characters and going for a much bigger scale maybe was too ambitious and felt like it expanded the world too much, even though, again, it's all great. It was a great movie. It didn't fit the same vibe that they had set for the first one. But it also gave us things like the canon events to kind of understand what that was across the universe. But yeah, it doesn't fit really with the first one in the sense that the first one was an intro the first one was an origin story, and then the second and third are going to be the actual story, quote unquote. It's like the first one was a preface, almost a very deep preface, but a very good preface.
Yeah, I get that.
Preface. And yeah, it just doesn't match. So that might be why people like the more down to earth rather than, I don't know. Again, it's hard to say one is better when they're both really good. Like you guys explained it.
Yeah. The second one is definitely like it doesn't feel complete just on its own, whereas the first one can stand alone really, really well because it's a complete story. The second one, it's going to be hard to say it itself is good because it relies heavily on the context from the first, and it doesn't feel complete until we've seen the third. So it's great. The story writing is still top notch, and it's just, I'd say just as good of writing as the first one, but the writing isn't finished. So it's, and it's not able to be alone quite like the first one does, because the first one, the ending leaves you satisfied where there's a climax and a drop off, and we're sitting at like a happy medium until there's that end credit scene that gives us a hint for the next movie. So I don't know, I think the first one just comes out on top because of its ability to stand alone.
Yeah, there's a great video that I've linked into the description by Schnee, who has done a lot of Arcane content. But he talked about, in one of his videos, the ending of Across the Spider-Verse and how it didn't feel wrong. So, for example, Fast X is one movie that is very much, it ends with stay tuned for what happens next on the Fast and Furious franchise. Like it just ends abruptly with you wanting, and you don't get that same feeling with Across the Spider-Verse. There's a lot of questions, but the reason you don't have the same feeling is because the end of Fast X, and it's just the one I'm using as an example, was the climax of the movie. It was the climax, and then it didn't resolve. It's almost like a song where it just is left unresolved and floating and not really final. Whereas what Shani pointed out is that the climax of Across the Spider-Verse was actually Miles revealing that he was Spider-Man to his mom. And there's a really long pause that you're expecting a reaction and nothing happens. And that's supposed to be like his arc of finishing and making things right with his family. And it doesn't go anywhere because it's not his universe. That's the point. That's the literal reason. But then the reason then it goes up into another seemingly climax is because it's beginning of the movie vibes, is what he said. It's not the end of the movie where you're feeling dissatisfied with how it wraps up, but it starts taking off again and gets you excited for what's coming next instead of just like, well, that didn't make any sense. It actually got to the climax of the whole movie and then gave you more or less a teaser for the next one.
Yeah. When you were saying that it kind of stalemates towards the end, that's definitely true, because you get to the point where he reveals himself as Spider-Man to his otherworld mom that has no idea what a Spider-Man is. That's when you start having more and more questions like, why isn't she reacting? Like, what's going on? And I feel like a lot of movies, when there's a sequel, like the biggest question you ask is like, what happens next? And like, I'm anxious to see like how this is going to play out. But I feel like there's so many other questions along with the end of Across the Spider-Verse to where it's like, it's a perfect new beginning because there's so many places the story could go. It doesn't feel like it's a set path. Whereas, for example, Infinity War, the ending of Infinity War, everyone went away and it's like, well, how are they going to win? We know that they are going to win. Whereas Across the Spider-Verse has left everything so open-ended. You don't actually know if stuff is going to play out. Like, is his dad actually going to die in this canon event? Is he going to be able to prevent that? Because the way that the story has set it up, it's like there's no true chance of winning because of plot armor for certain people. Like, it could end up anyway. I think that's really, really cool and unique.
I was going to ask, why do you put Across the Spider-Verse above Into the Spider-Verse?
I think I liked the scope of it. I liked seeing all of the references to Outside Spider-Man. Just seeing, again, I'm not a comics guy, but I like seeing Spider-Car and the Insomniac Spider-Man and all of those different characters being brought in. And I agree with your points of why you would put it lower, but I liked the experience of Across the Spider-Verse. And I think they took what was good about Into the Spider-Verse art style specifically, and we can talk about that in a sec, and cranked it up another notch. Not necessarily to an extreme level, but they brought it to another level that made it a little bit more enjoyable for someone with a degree in animation. For example, like the Vulture with Spider-Punk, they all showed a different... There were characters that were able to show a new style of animation, and part of me is worried that it's going to turn into a gimmick. The Wild Robot is coming out soon, and that has the same artsy style, and I'm like... It's getting kind of old, guys. It's not... I am going to go see the Wild Robot, but it still is becoming a thing. It's like you can't just use that and expect people to love your movie just because it looks interesting. But
Take Wish, for example.
Yeah.
Like, that one flopped, and it tried to do its own, like, fancy style of animation and everything, and some of the songs even felt like they were AI generated. That's how bad the writing was. So what's cool with the Spider-Verse is that it has an amazing art style, but the writing is even better than the art style. And the art style is great, which is saying a lot about the writing.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Into the Spider-Verse, I think Spider-Ham was one of the best characters that played with his art style because he's meant to be Looney Tunes. My favorite line in Into the Spider-Verse is...
What are you, some kind of silly cartoon?
You got a problem with cartoons?
But all of his tools aren't even... He doesn't really have the webs. He just kind of does cartoon stuff, which is great. He plays to his strength. And they did like I said, they experimented with different formats. Like Noir was black and white, and Penny was anime style. And is that it? I think that was it. That was really the most that they experimented, though they did do other art styles like the bokeh effect in comics where they have little dots for filling in different ways, and then like aberration in the background instead of blurring. Things like that were really great to see, and I've watched so many videos since then about how that works and all that, or even the freeze frames like that, just kind of doing a pow and he's jumping off the taxi and all of that are just so fun to watch. And they really put a lot of time and effort into it. The problem is, I think, for Across the Spider-Verse, and even as we get into Beyond the Spider-Verse, it sounds like they're somewhat overworking their animators again. Though it looks great, though the end product is amazing, do the ends justify the means? Mm-hmm. Zach says no. I've never actually worked in the animation industry, so I can't personally say, but yes, I understand that often that because they say, oh, we're going to release this in, like, let's say Falcon, or like, let's say the Captain America Brave New World, it is set for a February 2025 release. And unless they bump it a little bit, which has been known, that means that those VFX artists are working to make these next 8 months count. Like, they are on a time crunch. They have an end goal. Instead of, like, I'm working on a project. I know I've been teasing the audio drama a lot, but I'm not going to set a release date until it's done and we're satisfied with it. I don't want to crunch the people who are working on it.
Can't rush art.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So being understanding to that extent is huge when it comes to a wonderful workplace, I suppose.
I remember when the release date was first announced for Beyond the Spider-Verse, when it was supposed to be March 29th, 2024, I think was the date it was set for. I remember.
Wait, when was Across the Spider-Verse supposed to be released initially?
Oh, I don't know the initial for Across the Spider-Verse. Let me see if I can Google it.
There's no release date right now.
Yeah, it's undetermined.
April 2022 was its original.
Was when it was supposed to, like. And it released last year, 2023.
Yep.
With the actor strike and probably overworking and all that, it's probably better to delay it, even though it hurts the fans' hearts.
Yeah.
I remember after that release date was announced, there were like VFX artists coming out who were like, there's no way we get to it by that date.
Yeah. Hopes and prayers for the animation artists. They do a great job. Like the way that they opened Across the Spider-Verse with their fight against Vulture, like being a paper cutout and having Miguel come in. I mean, Miguel's almost the same, but it's still just another level that showed us what it was actually going on. I always point to, let's talk about art style since we're here. Some of my favorite art style moments, again, are the in-world words that pop up. One of them was like when Into the Spider-Verse, when Miles was falling and he was like, ah! And you saw the A's behind him, but then it reversed that and it did a woo up when he's flying. Oh. There's that one. The other one that I point to, I'm sure I've referenced it a number of times, is Gwen hugging her dad and kind of making the world explode in watercolors. That was beautiful.
So cool.
That was an that was explaining an emotional storyline with the art style, and I think that was great.
Well, that was kind of her whole world too. Was her whole world, like the colors were always defined by the emotions too.
Yeah, and you could see if you watched her skin tone, it wasn't consistent. It was reflecting the light that was in that world, whether it was blue, pink, purple, gray. It followed her story, and it was really her story for Across the Spider-Verse, which I didn't mind. I know it's really Miles' story, and we grew with Miles, but Across the Spider-Verse really honed in on Gwen, and I think that was great to kind of explore what makes her tick. What other art styles, or not necessarily art styles, but art aspects did you like within the two movies?
I kind of like how many of those small word things there were. You know, I don't know what you call those yellow boxes with the words in them. I don't know if there's a proper title for those.
Onomatopoeia, isn't that the word?
No, he's like the description boxes.
Yeah.
Oh, like towards the beginning where it's the
where it's like what's happening to me and all that. And
yeah, that's what I was thinking when he was changing and he was like, there were boxes popping up with his thoughts.
Yeah.
Wikipedia has a glossary of comics terminology.
Wonder who wrote that one.
I think it's just called caption.
Okay.
In a caption, words appear in a box separated from the rest of the panel, usually to give the voice to a narrator, but sometimes used for characters' thoughts or dialogue. So it's just caption.
Okay.
I remember there were even so many of them popping up in the second one that you'd have to actually pause it to see what they all say. And they're all just mostly just small gags, but that was really fun.
I think my favorite one that popped up was in the first Into the Spider-Verse when they're running away from the science building after getting the computer and he throws a bagel.
The bagel.
And you can just see bagel.
Yep.
But it's made even better with the return of that character as the Spot, which
Yeah, it
makes
was
zero
crazy.
sense. It's one of those extreme,
You
like,
threw a bagel at me.
yeah, extreme villain origin story. But it's funny because that became the meme of the first movie. Is like, did you see that when he threw the bagel, it said bagel, and then it's like, dude, what's your problem, man? He's like, back at Oscorp, you threw a bagel at me, and I decided to ruin the world, or whatever his problem was. That was pretty funny.
Let's talk about like villain creation though, because I think Across the Spider-Verse creates better villains than the first one. That's something that the second one has on top of the first one. The creation of Miguel feeling like he's a villain and fighting against him, even though you low-key think he's right, is great writing. And then also Spot, yeah, his origin story may feel like it's about a bagel, but it's actually so much bigger than that because of everything that Spider-Man did take from him. And it's like a lesson about collateral damage. It's, you can try and help as many people as you want, but people are still going to get hurt and you're going to make enemies. And now Miles is fighting the enemies he didn't mean to make. And that's, the writing for the enemies is amazing in the second one.
Well, I'm curious. I knew that Miguel was an enemy. Like, he was an antagonist. He didn't like the protagonist, which makes him the antagonist. But I never thought of him as the bad guy. I'm not saying he's not, but that was very interesting what you just said. I realized that, yeah, he's a Spider-Man and he's on the same side, but there's still the antagonist. And so, like, shouldn't the enemy of my enemy be my friend? Plus, we're both Spider-Man. So, like, is there really a divide? I know that maybe they'll make up in the third one and work together, but I never thought of him as, with the quotes, bad guy around him.
I definitely see him and Miles kind of putting aside some differences in the meantime to fight Spot, but Miguel is such an interesting character because he's a good guy and a bad guy at the same time, because he's fighting our protagonist and his motives are incredibly justified to the point where you're like, maybe he's right. Maybe Miles is being ambitious, but your emotions are with Miles rather than Miguel, because Miguel is emotionless. Because of his backstory, he was broken, and now his priority is vastly different than Miles.
I would argue that Miguel is the main antagonist of Across the Spider-Verse. It's one of those interesting movies where the main antagonist isn't necessarily the villain, because the main conflict of Across the Spider-Verse is between Miles and Miguel, and it's interesting to see their conflicting sides, because neither of them are completely right. Because I think Miles wants to have it both ways, and he needs to learn that, I mean, the bad things, you can't stop all of them, but at the same point with Miguel, you can't just stand by and let them happen. So it's a big conflict. It's like, should I save this one person and doom the universe, or let this person die to save the universe?
Sorry.
Did you get it?
There we go.
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
And I mean, it's a very similar conflict and discussion as we had in our Infinity War episode, but it's even more. They made the scope for it way bigger, with just whole universes being at stake.
For Miles' situations, do the ends justify the means? And that's the same question you're asking, just like you just mentioned a little bit ago with the artists being overworked. Is his pursuit to save his father worth it? Is the question that you're asking going into the third movie, which is a scary question, because you really want it to be worth it. You really want it to come out winning both sides, but part of you, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, it's not going to work. They made the canon events such a strong part of the story to where it's like actually scary for Miles. Like, you think there's no way that he's going to get away with it.
And it's two people's beliefs going head to head, and that's what causes fights. And that is most fights and conflict in superhero movies, is like two different ideologies, only this time they're supposed to be on the same side. Similar to Civil War, kind of, but Miles is very personal. And because Miguel has had such loss, especially when he jumped to that other universe, he feels the responsibility, and that's why he's kind of made himself the god, the the president of the Spider-Verse to have control over all of it, and to make sure that all canon events happen, and so on and so forth. And I also think, on that note, as we're talking about Miguel, is that Oscar Isaac was perfect for it. Like, his brooding, deep, gravelly voice was amazing to hear. Loved it. I didn't know how it would work as much with the post-credit scene of Into the Spider-Verse, but I really liked it once they kind of beefed him up and made him more intimidating.
Oh yeah, his redesign was crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty funny how they were like, you know what, he needs to be way more intimidating.
Let's beef him up.
Yeah.
And boy, did they.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's jacked.
Well,
as soon as Across the Spider-Verse came out, like, I saw so many Instagram reels on Miguel training workout routine. This is what you have to do. You need to do 300 pull-ups in 2 hours.
And probably take Tren.
Yeah.
As I've been making notes as I go, I think the comedy of these movies works well, or it blends so well with the seriousness. Some of my favorite jokes from the second one is the Spider-Man chase.
Drop what you're doing and stop Spider-Man. Wait, me? Miles Morales, he's entering Sector 4.
The other joke that made it into the final cut, and unfortunately was in a trailer, which I didn't like. It's one of those moments where I wish it would have just been a trailer. It's the Spider-Man therapy.
Oh, yeah.
He's like...
And then I looked at my uncle and...
let me guess. He died?
Things like that. I'm just going through my favorite moments of the movies. The yellow cube cameos is all I have, but that's the prison that they have where they confine anomalies or something, and they had a lot of cameos, especially Donald Glover as the Prowler, which was supposed to be him being Uncle Aaron in live action. At the very least, I am nervous that was the same level as John Krasinski in Doctor Strange, and they would just needed to get one look at him, and then the fans would be satisfied, and then they can cast whoever they want for the next one. Even though I still think Pedro Pascal is not right for Mr. Fantastic. But besides that,
conversation for another time.
Yeah.
I think that. Do you think that Donald Glover could still be a live action Uncle Aaron or Prowler in another production, or has he now been used up?
I don't think he's been used up. I mean, he's Uncle Aaron, or I mean, he's at least Aaron Davis in the Spider-Man Homecoming. So,
was he? Did they say Aaron Davis? Because I thought it was he said, I have a nephew, and that was the closest we got. But then a deleted scene said that had him calling a Miles. So that kind of confirmed it. But the deleted scenes don't technically count. I don't remember.
I think his name was Aaron, though.
Okay. Never mind. I am misremembering it.
Don't think he's been used up, but truthfully, I haven't put any thought into it. I looked at it as a fan, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I recognize face connection, and I didn't think about them even using him in the future. I don't know. I don't want to see a live-action Miles Morales. I don't think I want that. I think I'm very, very satisfied with Into the Spider-Verse, because it's kind of also combining all of the dead-end Spider-Mans that we've got. No Way Home also did that, because we had Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and what's his name? Tobey Maguire. Wow, I am so sorry. But it kind of tied off all of those ends and gave them an actual recession or closed out their story, and then Tom Holland can keep going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Wow, that felt really weird to use all of those syllables. The MCU.
Yes.
But I like not having so many Spider-Mans. Because after Andrew Garfield was done, we're like, oh my goodness, another Spider-Man? How many more are there? Can they just finish one and then just stick to one? I don't want another Miles Morales.
Yeah. I just saw the clip of Insomniac Spider-Man within those prisons, and I was like, oh, that looks so cool. It looks just like the game, and I love it.
Oh, yeah.
So good. Okay, the exception is video games. Video games are a whole different world. I want more Miles Morales in Spider-Man games, but I don't want more Miles Morales in movies.
Okay, that's interesting. I know we've kind of had an underlying tone or an underlying conversation about reboots, especially as we've been talking about DCU. I got a little bit of pushback from one of our reels about The Flash last week. saying that there's better storylines than Flashpoint, which I totally agree. There's totally other storylines we should explore with certain characters. But that's also the point of how often do you need to tell it in a different way? So, for example, we have a great 2 movies with Miles as the main character, even though, yes, Across the Spider-Verse is also Gwen's story, but it's really Miles' story because it bridges both of them and will bridge the third one. I don't see the purpose in bringing him to live action because we will get Miles fatigue, more or less. I think we're going to feel that with DCU going and the Batman also going. That will be kind of Batman fatigue, I feel. It's not necessarily superhero fatigue. It's just there's so much about this character because he's exciting and popular. And Miles is a fairly new character. But you're right. I don't think he should be brought to live action soon. I think eventually it would be good. Maybe as Tom Holland maybe gets another trilogy or something. And then after that, maybe he gets to hand it off to Miles or something. That might be a possibility, but that's like 10 years down the road.
Not anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Other favorite moments that I have, Gwen and Miles sitting upside down looking at New York is such a beautiful shot. Josh is dying.
There's so many scenes. I like to judge a movie's cinematicness by how many wallpapers there are.
True.
That's wallpaper. Into the Spider-Verse had so many wallpapers, just like you could pick so many frames. So many frames and just boom. Phone's background. Boom. My desktop. Boom. So many of them. And I think the one that I've thought of the most as a background is them sitting upside down.
Yes.
That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Like, what's up, danger? Like, what's up, danger?
Oh, that's so sick.
Those trumpets at the end. The doo-doo-doo-doo is just so heroic. The reason I brought that up then is because of the another upside down one of him dropping into the city, just fearless. And I had that as my wallpaper for a while. Like, that is beautiful. And I
did
so
too.
Good.
Man, we could talk a full hour about that scene.
Yeah, I know. People have.
Also, the speaking in the background. I'm sorry. The way that they're using previous dialogue that felt very normal in a sentence, and then giving it like a motivational like touch to it, where it's like genuinely just Miles going through every one of his thoughts, and then him putting them together to like give himself the oomph that he needs to go to the particle collider is it makes you hyped. Like, I was sitting in the movie theater like, let's freaking go, Miles. Let's do this. Like, I was about to go towards the particle collider.
Wow. What's really interesting about that scene is that I love the What's Up Danger and the soundtrack together, because you can't find that on Spotify.
That's so disappointing.
So sad. I would listen to that all the time if they had both of them together, but they're separate tracks. Yeah. But anyway, that's a small thing. And this is like the defining moment for his character. This scene is the climax of the movie more than Battle with Kingpin is, because this is where he decided who he is, which is kind of the lesson of the whole movie. Because the whole movie was about kind of the expectations, and like his dad put all these expectations on him, and he just wasn't really comfortable with that at all. I mean, he was comfortable with his uncle because his uncle had like no expectations for him. And then what he ended up learning is that after, he got bit by the spider and everything, he couldn't do it by living up to someone else's expectations. He had to live up to his own expectations. He had to be his own Spider-Man. I mean, that's kind of part of the joke in the Stan Lee cameo. It said like it always fits eventually, and that suit doesn't fit him because he's trying to be a different Spider-Man. It's only when he realizes that he has to be his own Spider-Man. I mean, and that's kind of what it fits perfectly line with the web shooters too, is that now he's finally realized who he's meant to be as Spider-Man that he can be Spider-Man. He just had to take that leap of faith, and now he knows who he is.
Well, and
sorry, just the idea that there's 2 climaxes to that movie just makes so much sense to me. And the climax of Miles' character is my favorite by far, but there's still the climax of the actual storyline. But his character building peaks right there.
Oh yeah.
And then you're like, oh, we're able to handle anything. Sort of like just the confidence that scene exudes makes the other climax of the story feel like nothing in comparison.
Zach, you said something about him being ready at that point, and I think it was an emotional leap of faith going to the layer underground and May helping him, shown by him actually taking a leap of faith off the building. But also it's been noted that when they're in the layer for the first time, he's looking up at a Spider-Man outfit and he doesn't fit. Like the head is above his, and his reflection is like in the chest and neck area. Whereas the perspective shifts in the second time during What's Up Danger, where his head fits in that silhouette of the suit because he's ready, and he's looking at it differently is the point. So
I love another detail. The reason, like, he's figured it out, but it's such a big leap of faith for him that he's scared of it, and he's still clinging to the wall. That's why the glass breaks, because he's still like attached to it, and he's taking it with him, and he's forcing himself off of that building in that leap of faith.
Yeah.
Such a cool detail. So cool. Like the hand pulling away the glass, that's another wallpaper right there.
Yeah. I mean, it's symbolic too. It's if you think about the physics, he's holding on, but he's pushed away, but he's still holding on. And yet physics isn't going to let him hold on. Physics is like, nope, you said go, and we're going. And that's, I mean, if we're going to get some learning principles out of this, it's going to be sometimes you got to go. And often there's no going back, and you just got to full send.
Yeah. Especially coming from people whose entire life is based off of faith and our faith in the Lord. Like, we have so many leaps of faith that are going to be in our lives, and we've got to trust the process. We've just got to trust that the Lord has stuff in his plan. There's never an emergency session in the Trinity. That's something my dad always likes to say. Like, there's never a time where something is going in contrary to God's plan. Never. And we may be clinging to that glass, but we've just got to take that leap of faith and trust.
Yeah. I mean, we're so caught up in worry, fear, and anxiety. Like, that wouldn't have been the same scene. It's basically the same scene earlier. That's the point, is that this is his character growth, but it's him standing on the edge of the building, and the music is growing and growing and growing, and then he just takes the stairs, which is funny in the moment, but then you realize, like, maybe we take the stairs too much.
Yeah.
A little convicting, maybe.
I was just gonna say too, and the fact that he decides to jump from a skyscraper this time instead of the shorter building that he was on before, it just really shows, it's like it's all or nothing. You just gotta take the leap no matter what.
Yeah, if you're gonna leap, make it the highest jump possible. Like, be ambitious, because God's got you, I guess. Is the more we're starting to build on.
Anything else about leap of faith before we keep going?
I think the trust us spank is very funny. Another side detail, but.
Well, I read it as trust US Bank, but yes, trust us is funny too. Josh, I'm calling you out.
Okay.
Tell me why you like Spider-Punk.
Oh. Ooh. Okay. So, because I'm gay? I'm not gay.
You heard that?
I heard that too.
I like females, contrary to popular belief.
Call your girlfriend Michael.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Let me tell you why I like Spider-Punk, and it's not because he's a boy. Let me say that first. Okay. So, in the first movie, there was a lot of animation storytelling as well, like using the frames per second. Like Miles Morales, he he was updating every other frame for every time that Peter Parker was updating every frame. Like, he was a very smooth animation, whereas Miles, when he is just starting out, very rough. He feels and is animated at a slower frame rate than everyone else. And that's just giving you more storytelling. And then in that leap of faith scene, he's finally working at the correct frame rate. He's updating with everyone else. He's figured it out. They do the same sort of thing in Across the Spider-Verse with Spider-Punk. He's so against the rules, he's also not animated like anyone else. If there's someone who's lesser or is not quite attuned with their spider powers, they're animated every other frame. They're updated every other frame. Whereas Spider-Punk, even though he's figured everything out and he's like gone so against the grain, he's actually updated every third frame. So he's acting on a third of everyone else's, just purely to contrast them. And I'm the one nerding out about animation and how stuff is working per frame when there's someone with a degree in animation in the presence of me. Like,
That's true.
Spider-Punk is the greatest form of going against writing I've ever seen. Like, he breaks all the rules and he breaks them well.
I talked about the storytelling through visuals just a while ago. That is probably even a better example is the frame rate. And a lot of people can't put a finger to it. There's a great video, again, link in the description, about choppy animation, because that's the plebeians way of calling it. But this is Doodly, who's an animator, and he's kind of explaining what animation is like and why Spider-Verse looks so good. Okay, so a lot of anime varies with frame rate. It often has to do with pen mileage, is what it's called. It's literally how much of your pen are you using. Now, most of it is 3D now and with your drawing tablet, but it used to be on paper and on cells, and they had to save resources and save time. And so they would often draw on twos. I would actually highly encourage some attention given to Doodly. He looks like he gets a lot of views. He has some good stuff. I already watched one, as I'm looking at the suggestions here, I watched one about Mutant Ninja Turtles and the new movie, and also about smear frames, but this one is about frame rate. And so when you animate on twos, if you have 24 frames per second, if you animate on twos, you're only ever animating every other one. And supposedly that's the one that Miles is animated at before he kind of gets a hold of what it means to be Spider-Man. I have heard that that's a myth. First off, that it wasn't intended by the animators. Second, if it did happen to be the case, it's inconsistent, and he's animated on ones before and he's animated on twos after the leap of faith. So it's not consistent. It's great that you got that out of it, but I'm sorry to break your bubble that was not meant to be. It's great if they did that, but I don't think it was ever meant to be that. Anyways,
we're gonna go with my perspective, and I refuse to believe that it was an accident or unintended.
It was my truth all along.
It is my truth.
If you go watch the video, he kind of explains how every so many frames you draw a new frame. Often with action ones, there's a new frame because the action is so fast. But yeah, sometimes you just have to save time and not draw the in-betweens.
There's a few animes out there I know that while you're watching them, like during the dialogue, if there's like, speaking of your pen mileage that you mentioned earlier, where they save all their pen mileage for action scenes in the future. So the dialogue, people's mouths, it's literally just moving back and forth between the same frame. And you're like, oh, they're talking in very little frames. This is gonna be a good episode. Like, there were a few times where I was watching and I'm like, oh, I already know what's coming up just based off of how the frames are working right now.
Sure.
And that's kind of cool detail that you can pick up on with frames.
They also sometimes hide their mouths, like just don't show them at all. Other times it's open close, and that also for Japanese anime is great for dubbing, so that it doesn't actually match the mouth. Like even the Japanese actors wouldn't match the mouth movement. It's just bop, 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 like a puppet. And then the American English people can come in and dub over it, and it's still bop, 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 bop. It's the same thing.
There is a. Have you guys seen Invincible?
No, you keep telling me, and I don't
There's
care. I actually know what you're talking about, though. I've seen the clip.
There's
the very meta.
There's a scene where it's talking about how like animation is made or like how comics are made in the show, and they're showing all of the examples of it, and it's so awesome. It's so awesome. I remember watching that, and my mind was just blown, and I'm like, I'm so gullible.
Yeah,
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, it's their style, and it's great. But back to style of Spider-Punk, you're absolutely right. He goes against the rules, and he goes against the rules of what should be normal, and that's animating on 1s or 2s, and he gets animated on 3s, which isn't wrong. It just looks very odd, and you can tell something's different. Again, not a lot of people might be able to put words to it, but also it looks like he's made out of cutout newspaper clippings, but that's also his world style. I don't know. I liked it. I liked his style.
Yeah.
It really told his story of who he was and what made him tick before he explained a single word. So,
yeah. I think one detail that I keep on thinking about that kind of bothers me is when they're first in another Spider-Man's world and they disrupt the canon event, during that first fight scene, the Spider-Gwen and Spider-Punk are having a little bit of banter, and Spider-Punk says, "Are those my..." What did he say? "Are those my Doc Martens?" No, not Doc Martens. Converse. What are Converse called? Like the shoes? But he mentioned something about the shoes. Chuck Taylors. Chuck Taylors, that's what they are. So Spider-Punk, his newspaper like art style, and Spider-Gwen's like don't mix at all. But they have some dialogue that suggests that she took his shoes, his Chuck Taylors, but her shoes look completely normal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that writing, that's like the only quarrel I have with the entire Across the Spider-Verse movie. Like, it doesn't make sense that her shoes she's wearing are his, but they look like hers.
Sure.
Does that make
I
sense?
see. Yeah, I didn't notice that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that irked you so much.
I was in the movie theater watching it, and I'm like, wait, no, a flaw.
Not in my perfect movie. No, he won't.
No.
If I had a nitpick, and I should have brought it up earlier with the "What's Up, Danger," is I actually don't like May jumping into his dramatic moment because I feel like it cuts it up too much.
Takes you out of it.
I like the ambiguous voices of the memories in his head from his dad and others, but I feel like May jumping in there and saying, "I knew you were coming," or something like that kind of brings me out of it, especially right before the jump. And after the jump, and he's falling, and then it cuts to her showing that she gave him web slingers.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, they fit perfectly, and then he catches himself. That just seems out of place to me, and I feel like it could have been like, oh, is he gonna swing in that moment? But
I can appreciate that, actually. Mm-hmm. I never even thought about that, but that actually makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Zach, what's your nitpick?
Here's my nitpick. So in Across the Spider-Verse, we know that Miles is the anomaly. That's the word I'm trying to say. So if he was never meant to be Spider-Man, why does he still have canon events?
Yeah, that's too true. Josh is that's Josh.
My nitpick.
That's a big nitpick.
Wait, that could actually be part of the third movie. That whole explanation in avoiding canon events. If Miles isn't supposed to be Spider-Man, why would he have a canon event? And that could be his whole argument against Miguel. I don't know. That could be a plot hole. I don't want to. Not my baby. Not my movies.
I think it's a plot hole
for now.
Unless maybe Miguel. It's been a while since I watched it, but maybe Miguel already explained it. You're right. The point was that he's not supposed to be Spider-Man. Is that spider got loose, or no? That spider was from the collider. No. Yes.
Yeah, I got pulled into Earth 6, whatever it was. So.
Yeah, and then of course the main Spider-Man from that universe died. But technically, Miles hasn't had a canon event yet. That's what he's scared of. Is it Beyond the Spider-Verse starts and they're like, oh, you were never supposed to have a canon event because you were never supposed to be Spider-Man? Or is it once you become Spider-Man, then you're bound to have a canon event where you're close father figure dies.
No, we see his canon event with his uncle dying as a canon event in Across the Spider-Verse. So.
Oh.
Well, then why is he so scared about his dad dying? That's his point of rushing home, is to try and save his dad.
Well, because that's a different canon event. There's the uncle dying and the captain dying. Well, there's a whole long list of canon events. It's not just one.
Yeah. You're right. I thought it was your father figure, your loved one, and because he had kind of pushed away his dad and taken Uncle Aaron as his father figure. That's right. It's uncle dying, and then the captain, who just in Miles' universe happens to be his dad.
Well, there was a whole long list of canon events too. There was the Venom. We saw Venom. We saw, I think, a girlfriend dying was probably a canon event in there, and we just saw a full long list of them.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That is a big nitpick. That is. I think I saw one YouTuber who really made that ruin the movie for him, and I'm like, I think that's a plot hole you can overlook for the sake of enjoying the movie. There's so much more to these movies than just that, and it's been interesting to see that phrase of canon event come into pop culture, especially in like casual social media stuff. But yeah, it's weird.
Can I have another nitpick?
Yes.
In the first one, so Gwen kind of senses that she's supposed to go to that school before Miles even has powers.
Yes.
Which is kind of weird.
Yeah. You gotta stop. Josh is gonna unfriend you, but
oh no, he's gone. We lost Josh.
What have you done?
Sorry. Oh no.
Not my movies.
Not us looking critically at movies, so we don't take them at face value.
No, that's actually very fair. That's a nitpick that I also have of that movie, and I've thought of that before. But movies got a movie. Gotta figure out how to make the plot go along, even if part of it does feel forced. Like one of my favorite movies, Up. My biggest nitpick is one of the main characters in there, where it's Russell, and he is exactly everything that what's the grandpa? Carl. He's everything that Carl needs. Everything, like exactly down to a T. And like Gwen going to the school, like it's too perfect for the movie, and it's too just that little bit too far-fetched for it to feel reasonable. So,
I don't know exactly why you were bringing up. I feel like you didn't resolve that. Okay.
I don't know why either. The moral of the story is movies have to have movie things happen in order for the story to progress. Right. Very few movies don't have that. Very few. Yeah. Like, so I can only think of 2, I think.
There's not a perfect movie.
There's not a perfect movie.
Point.
Passion of the Christ.
I mean, it's a movie about a perfect man. I don't know if you could call it a perfect movie. I've still never seen it.
It's not a perfect movie. It's not a perfect movie.
I think Passion of the Christ is the one that you should look at the most critically.
Yeah.
So that I retract that statement.
Yeah, sometimes circumstances just got to happen, but that's kind of if you think about it, like if there was supposed to be a movie made about anyone in their universe, it's made about them because that happened to them, not because they're in a movie and something has to happen. Like, yes, that's our explanation, but if you think about it in their world, the reason their story is being told is because something crazy happened. It's like 127 Hours. Is that the title? I always get the numbers mixed up. Where it's dramatic because it happened and not because, what if a rock fell on his arm? So yeah. Hey everyone, editing Seth here. I'm interrupting this episode because Zach, Josh, and I talked for quite a while. And I decided to split this into a 2-part episode. So stay tuned for a couple weeks for when we finish it off. Also, you can see my real office. I didn't want to put up the green screen. But we look forward to sharing the rest of the episode with you in a couple weeks. So have a great week. See ya.